Good evening. Welcome to everyone to the second meeting that we have organized with high technician working within UNHABITAT. Tonight we have the honor to have as guest Salvatore Fundarò. I ask Antonella Contin, who is our main connection with UNHABITAT, to introduce our guest. And so I give now the floor to Antonella.
Thank you very much, Sara. For me, it's really an honor and a pleasure to have with us this evening Salvatore Fundarò. But first of all, because it's a sign that the Italian school is very powerful and is able to, I don't want to use a huge word, but I think that we are able to understand the deep meaning of the other culture. So I know that Salvatore from Italy went to Spain, to Barcelona, and he right now is working a lot in Africa. So this capability from Italy to understand other culture and the need of the other culture is one of the signs of our capability to interpret life and the life of the other. I don't want to spend so many words because the lecturer of Salvatore Fundarò will explain his competencies. He's an architect and urban planner, and he works for the Urban Planning and Design Lab in UNHABITAT, and as we mentioned and we comment a few moments ago, is a unit that must work dirty the hand of the official that have to work directly on the ground. Every project is really contest-based. So I think that for our student, the lecture this night will be very, very relevant because we will speak exactly of something that is dealing with the local scale, not only from the physical dimension point of view, but also social dimension point of view, because Salvatore Fundarò is also an expert in participatory processes that can allow us as architect, urban designer, and an agent of the construction of the city to dialogue with the policymaker, official, local community of the countries where UNHABITAT is operating. So how is it possible through this participatory process reach the consensus regarding a shared vision? I think that is one of the competencies that Salvatore Fundarò could share with us tonight. And another element that is fundamental is the fact that UNHABITAT, and in particular the Urban Design Lab, is dealing with an idea, a new idea of a public space as a place where this consensus could be embodied. I know that we have this evening students from different parts of the world, so in China, in Iran, also in Turkey, in India. To speak about public space could be a tricky issues, but I think that Salvatore Fundarò could allow us to understand what does it mean using this using public space as a driver of the construction of a sustainable city. So thank you very much, Salvatore, for your generosity and for your time. I leave you the floor, and for our student, enjoy, and please be proactive and try also to ask question or doubt or your impression. I also would like to, I don't know, probably Sara and Michele, if you would like to present the colleagues that are with us tonight, that I'm pretty sure that they will also animate the debate afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonella. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Sara and Michele, for organizing this session. For us in UNHABITAT, it's not only a pleasure to be here, but it's also something that we have to do. We have to share our ideas. We have to share what we are doing in order to build this consensus around our principles. So in a way, it's a pleasure, but also I think it's something that is due from the UN, let's say, family. As Antonella was mentioning, I'm Italian. I'm living in Spain, or let's say my family was living in Spain, but my office is in Nairobi. At the moment, I'm working from Spain because of COVID situation. Our offices in Nairobi are still closed, but hopefully in October we will come back and reopen the offices that we have. So UNHABITAT is the only agency with UNEP that is actually based in Africa, and this is also relevant. We are the Human Settlement Agency, and I think it's politically and it's very relevant that our headquarters are located where the problem is, that is mostly the African countries. Today I know that you have a sort of I'm trying to share my screen.
Working, Salvatore.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I know that it's Friday night. You have other duties to do. Most probably you are also tired. So my presentation will be full of pictures, not too much text, in order to be, let's say, straightforward and light. My presentation will talk about cities and the trends and challenges related to urbanization today. I will then introduce the SDGs and the new urban agenda. So let's say the two main documents that we are using in order to fix the situation. And then I will also provide 2 or 3 examples of our recent work in UNHABITAT in some countries. So let's start with, as you probably know, one of the major problems in 2015, the half of the world's population was already living in urban areas, and by 2050 it is expected that these figures will increase to 66-70%. So it is a milestone in the human history. For the first time, people living in cities are more than the ones living in the countryside. Also, it is important to remember that 70% of the GDP is generated in cities. So cities are important. If you want to fix and achieve the goals of SDGs, you need to fix cities. This is something that is quite evident. Also, let's say things are happening fast. If Rome was built in 2,000 years and lasted 2,000 years to reach 2 million, Shenzhen did it in 20 years. So we have also a sort of time, a clock that is running, and we have to do something fast and in an efficient way. Which are the problems of our cities? The problems are related with, most probably, I cannot spend the entire time in explaining in deep all the complexity of this, but let's say it's related to density. It's a wrong model that is coming most probably from UK, USA, and has been, let's say, exported to us in other countries. This model of the low residential and the high density business center in the cities. This is creating almost everywhere in developing countries problems related with traffic, transportation, etc., and land consumptions. So there is a problem of model for building our city and for the urban growth. Of course, other countries like Hong Kong or China, they are already dealing with density, but also it is important to mention the scale of things, how we can deal with density, keeping some sort of humanity and quality in our cities. Important figure here, the urban population is increasing, but also the sprawl and the low density in our cities. The average urban land per person in 1990 was 200. In 2015 was 277. So we are consuming more per capita, also land per capita in our city. So the density is going down. Of course, with the increase of population, you can imagine that this is becoming a big problem. Also, the way we are planning our city. I mentioned the US model that came to us and the UK USA model that came to us in the beginning of 20th century. And also this model based on the car, the big infrastructures for the car. We discovered the car past 100 years, let's say more than 100 years ago, and we liked very much. And we decided to shape our cities for the car and not for the people, creating in some cases some monsters, spaces with no reference, that are not reference for people, but are just, let's say, spaces for infrastructure, spaces for mobility. Actually, there is a lot of cities that are suffering because of this misunderstanding regarding the role of the private vehicle. Of course, not mentioning the transit and the traffic that is generated by this understanding. This is the main artery in Saudi Arabia, connecting north to south. The entire city, I mean, the entire city is more than 40 kilometers in the north-south direction. And in order to cross it, you have to pass through this avenue. And of course, you can see already, and I'm pretty sure that every one of us have experienced a traffic jam, the time we are losing in this space. Also, the problems of air pollution. 90% of our cities, according to WHO, are presenting index of air pollution that is not good and not healthy for people. 90% of our cities are not performing well in terms of air pollution. And this is something actually, and this is also created by this, let's say, putting the car in at the center of our life in our cities. Of course, other problems. Housing is needed. Housing units are needed, but of course, we cannot, let's say, transform our city in a sort of amount of or number of units one with the other. We have also to think what is happening in between the buildings. One image is from Iran, one image is from Colombia. We have same problems in different places of the world. Just picking up two images that I think are interesting. In the second image in Santa Marta, you can see that the space is okay, but the space is only tarmac for vehicles. Where is the sidewalk for the people? I mean, is the understanding is exactly what I was saying, is the understanding that the space between the private space, so the street, is a space for vehicles. We are forgetting that in the past we were using our legs. Also, some interesting information regarding energy. 70% of greenhouse gas emissions is coming from our cities. It's expected that in 2030, the global demand for energy will rise by 40% and water by 50%. And you can see in these graphs that in developed country cities, most of the energy is spent within our buildings, while in developing countries, this amount of energy is spent in transport. And transport is really related to planning. It means that in developed countries, we have some problem to fix in terms of mobility. And of course, infrastructure sometimes is also used to segregate and not to link people one with the other. This is a famous image, and you can, I mean, it's self-explaining. The highway is actually a barrier between two places with totally different incomes. Of course, the problem also for migrants and refugees that is increasing. This is something that we will have to look carefully. I know that you will have in few days a session on that, so I will skip it for the moment. And then, of course, we are coming to the slums. This is the slum of my city, one of the most, or the sadly famous places in Nairobi. Is the Kibera, is home of 300,000 people. Of course, you can see from the image the condition. There are some indicators that lately are explaining us that possibly the percent of people living in the slum as percent on the overall amount of population is decreasing, and this is good, but the number, the total number of people living in this condition is still increasing. So we are calculating that in 2025 we need at least 1 billion new homes in order to fulfill the needs of the human population, and with this backlog of informality that we have. And let's discuss a little bit why this backlog. This is let me try to explain what is happening. This is the city of Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso. You can see it is a village in Burkina Faso that that was colonized by French, and they imported in Burkina Faso this, let's say, Haussmannian, probably boulevard concept. Of course, not really thinking in the cultural context of the colony. Of course, that was the typical trend in those years. But they created a grid of streets. You might say this is bad because, of course, there is no respect of the culture of these people, and of course, it's a sort of Westerner idea overlapped in Africa. Of course, we are agree on that, but also I would like to discuss about the complexity of things in mostly in Africa. This is the same city, a satellite image of the same city today, or at least I took this photo from Google Earth, I think 5 years ago. So there is a moment in which this city decided not to, for different political reasons, not to plan with this scheme, or not to follow the scheme of, let's say, geometrical grid that was introduced by Westerners. What is happening if you don't plan in advance? And what is happening is exactly what is happening in the image on the right, that the people is still coming to the city. African cities are attracting population from rural areas every day, and people need a shelter. So the only way to do is self-organizations of those shelters. You might say that this is the right way. I am not sure. The problem of hygiene, security, resilience of the right part of the city instead is with the same level of incomes. Actually, there is not so much difference between the left and the right in terms of incomes, but the right part of the city will be really difficult to be fixed in the future. So yes, planners in the Western from France did something bad, probably, but we have to introduce some solutions for the people that are still coming to African cities every day, also while we are speaking. And in order to be, let's say, a little bit optimistic, we can recall our past. This is my other city. I showed Nairobi, and this is Barcelona, actually. This is Barcelona 70 years ago. The beach in Barcelona, I think most of you have visited this place. These were the conditions of the people living in Barcelona 70 years ago. And this is the same place today, the Villa Olímpica. Of course, things happen, Olympic Games, but also governance, good relation between planning, finance, and governance made this possible. Intervention of privates in building the city, a sort of balance between different aspects that I will explain later. So change is possible, but we need some ingredients for the recipe. Another problem is related to planning and the different scales of planning. We are on the left. You see the typical planning hierarchy that we have from the national to let's say the public space. So we have the regional plans, the metro and local plans, the neighborhood and public space infrastructure plans. And after that lower scale, you usually go to and move to the licenses, the building licenses. So the problem in developing countries is that there is no clarity in the institutional setup. So who is in charge of what? Who is doing the national special strategy? Who has to do the local plan, the private, the public? Which are the responsibilities and the roles? Also, sometimes we are lacking the contents. Is this not clear what a local plan should say and what a regional plan should say, and the link also and the coherence between the two? Also, we have to deal with low-tech capacity in the public sector, mostly in the public sector. So the public sector is usually in developing countries really lacking technical capacity in order to deal with complex problems. And we also have a lack of data. This is something that I would like also to emphasize. We are used to a world, to live in a world in which data is constantly informing our mobile phones. But in these countries, we have to work usually in a context of data scarcity. So we have, actually, I will explain how we are trying to innovate also in UN in order to work with data scarcity. And these are two diagrams. I am not sure how much you are familiar with the process in urbanization process, but let's say I'm trying to be as clear as possible and simple as possible. Let's say in the first row, we have the process in developing countries, in most of African countries, actually. So you have one developer that is building is development, the person in yellow that is developing outside the city, usually private development, and then the community, the city has to provide after that, because there are people there living. The developer has sold already the units to privates, has to pay and connect the new development with the rest of the city. Of course, the developer is doing a lot of money, while the community has to pay for all the infrastructure in order to connect the two areas, the city and the new development. This is the typical situation in developing countries. Mostly in Kenya, for example, is absolutely typical. So the community, the public has to finance, has to spend money, taxes, in order to finance actually the benefits of the developers that usually are really sometimes connected with the political power. In the normal situation, there should be a there should be a plan, there should be, this is the second row below, the people should put together the land in order to follow a plan, pay for the infrastructure, and let's say still making some money, having a surplus in selling the units once urbanized, but then with the return for the community of new public spaces, new parks, new facilities for free, actually, financed by the urbanization process. That should be the right one. But this is exactly what is not happening in most of developing countries. And why it's not happening, I will try to explain later. So SDGs, of course, we have one SDG that is really related to these challenges that I was mentioning. How to deal with SDGs? SDGs are setting goals with specific targets. You can see I listed the targets for the SDG 11 that is related to sustainable cities and communities. Below, of course, is related to housing, transport, environment, public space, cultural and natural heritage preservation, etc., etc. Are major goals that need to be grounded and territorialized. Each country has its own form to tackle and deal with the goals we have to achieve in 2030. And one tool that I propose to you to use is at least if you are a planner or urban designer, is the new urban agenda. Is the best we have at the moment, at least. Not perfect document, has been criticized many times by different people. The people from the left are saying that it's too conservative. People from the right, they are saying it's a sort of socialist pamphlet. So usually it's really difficult to put together under the same umbrella different countries and different experts. We have tried and we have something there. The new urban agenda is a sort of trying to make the best from the expertise we have in different universities and trying to provide elements and principles that we have to use in the next 20 years in our practice. I really suggest you to have a look at this document and use it also. At least the principles are quite interesting. And the principles are mainly related, instead of urban sprawl, try to be compact, the problem of sprawl and land consumption, sorry. Then try to integrate people and not segregate people, and then try to connect people together. Also resiliency and other, but we can, let's say, in the field that of planning and design, we can, let's say, focus on these three main ideas. And then there is an innovation that is not really there, and I'm referring to it as the monopoly game. The new urban agenda is based on an assumption. We broke our head for years trying to understand why we are planning so bad and why our plans, if are good, are not implemented. And we, in UNHABITAT, and this is also there in the new urban agenda, found that most probably the problem is related to a triad of elements that need to play together in order for a plan or for the urbanization of the city to work. We need a good design, so the table, the board of the monopoly. We need the streets. We need a plan. We need a good plan, a plan that is working. But it's not enough. A good plan, a good map is not enough. We need rules to play monopoly. We need good rules and rules that are really fitting in the context of the table board. We cannot use rules coming from the risk into the monopoly. It won't work. And we need also money in the case of monopoly, of course. We need finance. We need to finance the urbanization, and we need an exchange of money between privates and the public. But in monopoly is the bank. And also we have the player, the stakeholders, many players are private and public. This is more or less what is happening and why we have problems, because we sometimes have a good plan, but we have no rules and regulation. We don't have the governance to implement the plan. Sometimes we have both the good plan and the rules, but we don't have the money, or we have no system to, let's say, urbanize through an exchange of money. So this has been my introduction. I'm a bit late with my time. I'm trying to run fast now. Some example of this work, the work that the Urban Lab is doing in developing countries. So in order to explain a little bit and ground down in examples those concepts. The first one is in Saudi. Is a Saudi cities program we did from 2013 to 2018 in 17 cities, covering 17 cities. We tried to analyze 17 cities in Saudi Arabia in order to understand which were the problems in this country, in order to, through the analysis of the 17 cities, using, of course, the filter of urban finance, urban planning and design, and urban governance. So trying to understand the three categories I was explaining of the monopoly, try to understand what is not working, which are the gaps in the 17 cities from spatial, financial, and legal perspective in order to reform the planning system in the country. We did it analyzing different scales from the national to the neighborhood with products that we call city profiles. Those are some, let's say, synthetic cars that we made once we did the 17 reports. We compared the results one with the other, and we discovered, of course, that the density is very low. All the cities in Saudi Arabia are working with a medium density of 35 people by hectare, while we consider that less than 100 or 150, anything is sustainable. You cannot implement public transportation, for example. Of course, we also analyze the growth of the cities. The cities are growing very fast and in a less dense way. Also, there is a lot of vacant land within the cities, the built-up area. So instead of looking at the vacant land already present inside the built-up area, cities are still expanding. Of course, this is causing problem of infrastructure cost, utilities cost, and absolutely an unsustainable situation. Of course, also the public transport is very, very limited because of the same. We also analyzed the problem of the country. The problem of the country, as you can imagine, is that is really centralized. There is a absolute monarchy, and everything is decided in Riyadh. We don't want to enter in the detail of this graphic, but just look at the how dense is the ministerial level, that is the red one, the pinky red one in the top, and how scarce are the responsibilities of the cities and the regions. So very centralized. Also, of course, we did this analyze based on the evidence for cities, but we analyzed the density, the land use, the access to public transportation, the access to jobs, but at the same time also looking at, for example, the budget categories of the same city. And we discovered something that, for example, 50% of the budget of Medina was almost reserved to maintaining municipal roads and creating new municipal roads, something that is insane, of course, not sustainable. We analyzed the issues of each city, and from this analysis, we also arrived to recommendation for the cities. Those recommendations then were for different parts of the cities, but also were illustrating different thematics. For example, environment, the sprawl, and the preservation of historical values, etc., etc. So at the end, we understood that in the 17 cities we had, for example, 17 over 17 where the problem was the sprawl, while fragmentation of urban tissue was affecting 14 over 17 cities, resilience was also massively present, and also half of the city also some heritage loss problem and spatial inequality. At the same time, we also listed in a resume in each of the volumes, the 17 volumes, one for each city, how the city should have been, let's say, the things, the recommendation for a new vision of the city that was responding to the problems and according to those. Also, we did 3 demonstration projects. These are more on the scale of the design. Once understood which were the problems at the country level, we decided to do 3 demonstration projects for problems that were common to almost all the cities. One on sustainable densification in Buraida, one on transport and transit-based regeneration in Arar, and one regarding let's say the downtown, the historical center preservation in Alasa. I will present 1 or 2 of those. This is in Arar. The current situation is that we have in the middle of the city this highway that is crossing north-south the city, the one in the picture. And what we promoted is let's convert this into an urban boulevard. So this is public land that you can transform in a boulevard with new housing units, so increasing density, making money from the public land in a very central area of the city, and also introducing public transport. In Buraida, we introduced ideas in an area of 40 hectares in order to demonstrate that more sustainable densification was possible in Saudi in terms of residential and mixed use, introduction of mixed use in the country. And we studied a little bit the context of the cultural context of the housing typologies. We know that there is some constraints related to the fact that really the privacy is mandatory in Saudi, the role of the women. So we studied the houses and we proposed alternatives in order and demonstrating that a more pedestrian oriented and mixed use oriented neighborhood was possible while preserving the Saudi and the cultural values of the country where we were working. That this is the final result. You can see public space, pedestrian spaces, looking at the micro scale of trying to create a system in which pedestrian spaces are, let's say, livable, looking at the shadows and the dimension of the streets in order to, let's say, defend people from the hot weather, etc., etc. Those are recommendations that can be applied not only to this plot, but everywhere in Saudi Arabia. So, as I was saying, these 20 documents, 17 cities profile, plus 3 demonstration projects, all together in order to transform having a strategic reform of things in Saudi Arabia. For the first time in the process, we had the women contribution, women speaking in front of men in Saudi Arabia. We had workshops with principal stakeholders. Every line design was actually validated with people there. And that was also interesting in order to validate our knowledge regarding the country. So we really had, I think, almost 30 workshops in the 17 cities in order to well understand if our understanding of the things on the ground was correct. And this is a key aspect. I will repeat now in the other project, but it's key to validate the data and also make let's say people from the city understand which are the main the possible solution for the main challenges they have. This is very, very important, and I think is the participatory approach. Is part of the let's say, is a backbone, important backbone of our planning activity and design activity. This is a project that we are doing now, is still ongoing, is Conakry in New Guinea. Conakry is one of the biggest producer, is the world biggest producer of bauxite, that is the mineral that is generating aluminium, so potentially very rich, unfortunately really poor. Most of the people is living outside the cities that is Conakry and living in villages. The coast is has a fantastic mangrove area. Is all let's say covered by mangroves that you can understand are a very important element of the biosystem. Are cleaning the water are really important, but of course the pressure on urbanization toward the coast is also putting at risk this fantastic mangrove area at the delta. Also, you can see in the image there is a problem of waste management. Waste is usually thrown to the sea, at least in Conakry city. So we analyze the different scales, the problems, the challenges. We are still analyzing. We are starting now. We have just completed the analysis and the contextual analysis at different scales. And now we are starting working on the proposal. So it's really the first time this document is shared externally. As I was mentioning, this is the exportation of Guinea bauxite or gold, sorry, and the relevance of this concession, mining concession in the country is quite relevant. It's also, of course creating jobs, but it's also creating environmental disasters, and till now has been done providing space for infrastructure that is exclusively used by the mining concession and but not by the people. So we have some railways that are just transferring bauxite from the mining fields into the ships that you can see there, but not by the people of Conakry. Of course, as in many countries in Africa, you have agriculture. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can spend a few minutes more or I have to close, but let me know if I have to close.
Salvatore, you can go on. You have to go on for sure.
Okay, I will go on. So the typical problems of countries in Africa: rural production, rural jobs, mostly agriculture, while in the city center more commerce and retail. Of course, also a difference between rural and urban areas in terms of GDP. That is also something we have to. And of course, the problem of migration from the rural areas to the city center. This is typical to each city in Africa, and not only in Africa, also in developing countries, let's say. And this is the analysis we have done regarding the evolution of the built surface in cities between 1990 and 2020. So in 30 years, you can see in the purple area is the new urban area that is constructed in Guinea. So you can see from this image really the impact of this migration from rural areas. And also what we have done, we have tried in different ways to gather data. In the innovation that the Urban Lab adopted in order to gather data in this country, in order to build this document has been, in my opinion, is relevant. We are really innovating in the way we are gathering data from satellite images, but also on the ground through workshops and also with open data resources that we can find. And what we have done an analysis of this region in terms of facilities, and what is happening is quite clear, and that is explaining also the migration, that everything is happening in the big cities and nothing is happening outside the big cities. So the city of Kindia and mostly Conakry are the only one that are, let's say, are providing services to people, so are the ones that are also attracting people from rural areas. I was mentioning the way of data gathering. We are organizing, we are speaking with the people, we are using workshop in order to gather data that is not there. In developing countries, we have GIS GIS centers, layers that are open for everyone. In developing countries, we don't have much of this, and we have to work with the scarce information we have. So meeting people and understanding with them on top of maps how the city works, how the territory works, this is really fundamental. And that was one of the key aspects of the contextual analysis in Conakry. Of course, then these maps work with the people are then by our expert transformed in a more, let's say, scientific analytic maps. This is more or less the same. It's explaining what is happening in Conakry in terms of extension of the city center. That is actually the gray. What will happen in the future if we continue developing using the business as usual model. And also we are working on let's say on the finance. We have listed 1,000 projects that the different ministries are on the table for Conakry, and we are trying to understand if they are feasible or not. We are categorizing where they are on the spatial maps that we have, and then we are also understanding the impact in terms of finance or of let's say financial resources needed in order to be implemented. And with this analysis that is almost completed, so it's still ongoing, then our understanding is that we will categorize the projects that can, in our opinion, be prioritized in the next 20 years, and the ones that we have to, let's say, forget or put in a second level, second tier of category. So we are doing a lot of work on that, looking at this project by project, understanding how much money it will require, where is it, etc., and if it's matched also with our proposal that is still up to come in the next months. And this is it. I think I will skip this final slides because it's a methodology, it's a spatial methodology. We intend. It's called SDF, Spatial Development Framework. It is related to, I was mentioning here, it's not a project, it's a methodology we are using. It's a very fast and dirty way of dealing in Africa, in sites, in countries with data scarcity. Is a framework that explains that informs the national government what is happening on the ground through a very let's say clear and fast forward tool that is called the matrix of function. We are selecting some functions and we are just seeing which of the cities in the area have those functions. And from that, we are extracting the centrality or not of the places. And of course, through a system that is called multi-criteria evaluation, we are, let's say, understanding the relation between different settlements and centers. And from that, in a very, very easy way, so not requiring huge amount of data, but just discussions, analysis from satellite images, we can, let's say, reach a solution in order to inform territorial planning and inform national, and let's say link the national vision with the things that are happening on the ground. So the territorial planning level. If you want, you can go in YouTube and text and search for matrix of functions and the spatial multi-criteria evaluation of the SDF, and you will find videos that are explaining better this this methodology. The key element is that it's flexible, it's simple, it's transparent, and requires talking with people in order to achieve a decision. The decision is not coming from the data, but it's coming from the interaction between the experts and the stakeholders. And with that, I'm completing my speech. I'm sorry if it was too dense of information, but I think it was a little bit needed. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Salvatore.
Io devo accendere. Puoi andare di là che io devo accendere.
I'm pretty sure that we can open a small session of question and answer or comment. And I really would like to ask our colleagues and the trainers of the workshop to open their camera and also try to activate the debate, trying also to territorialize that lecture regarding the project that the students are doing in Piacenza. I think that there are many possibility to connect some concept that Salvatore Fundarò presented this evening with some issues that we are dealing. And I'm sure that Fabiano Nemes, I would like to introduce Fabiano Nemes to Salvatore. Fabiano is a professor at Politecnico Milano, but he is from Brazil, and is one of the few colleagues that since year are working with SDGs with students. So thank you very much, Fabiano. Please, the floor is for you.
Thank you, Antonella. Thank you, Salvatore, for a very interesting talk. I have a couple of questions to you. Well, perhaps three questions. The first one is, I wondered what your view is on the question of land regularization, because this is a common theme also in informality, informal developments in Latin America. Some would say it is absolutely necessary. Some would say that this encourages further informal land take. And I wondered what your opinion is on that, and how, if that is to be done, how to go about it. Because I seem to see that in the case you showed us, this is probably also something that's being discussed. The second question is regarding the multi-scalar level of engagement with policymakers, those that can execute plans. And I was wondering, in your participatory processes, how much up and down the different scales were you able to go? Now, did you work mainly from bottom up, or were you able to meet somewhere in the middle? And then the third question is, in a way, a consequence of that. It is essentially about what happens with the plans. Once you have those plans worked out, do they get put forward to the different planning departments? And is there any hope for implementation of the plans, and so on. So, but again, thank you very much. I thought it was fascinating. Also interesting to see that you appear to be using the new urban agenda as an instrument to territorialize the sustainable development goals. And if I can afford a fourth question, then I'll ask, how do you see the next step being, for territorialization of sustainable development goals? Would it be through an advancement of the new urban agenda, or would it be through perhaps something else? And I will stop now because otherwise Antonella will kick me out of the room. So thank you.
Shall I respond directly, or maybe we take others? I don't know how you prefer.
I think that are so dense questions that
yes.
probably you can start, otherwise it's difficult to follow you.
Land regularization, I think you are meaning the, let's say, formalizing informality in the same place. If this is...
It could be, but it was more related, my question was more on the sense of the property of land, and what happens to that house.
No, there is an interesting, it's an absolutely interesting and key aspect of our work. I suggest you, there is one experience that maybe is interesting, is in Medellin, Colombia. We have done the Pilar experience. I think there is also a publication on that. We is a neighborhood project in which we try to let's say, we so-called participatory in integrative land readjustment. So trying to do urban renewal in a let's say, let's call slum area in Medellin, keeping as much as possible the people in the same place, but really looking at the financial feasibility of that. Of course, you have to understand that we can urbanize only with money, and so we have to balance the problem of keeping people there and investing money on the ground. I think this experience, unfortunately not implemented, was approved as a detailed plan by Medellin municipality, but never implemented because of a change of municipal leadership, actually, unfortunately. But it's quite interesting in order to, let's say, at least understand which is UNHABITAT position on that respect. It is also quite, it's so complicated. You keep low-income people in the same place, and you want to mix with newcomers that will pay for the infrastructure. Easy to say, very difficult to do, actually. In Africa, is really, sometimes it's really impossible to do that so straightforward. One of our principles is related to social mix, so keeping people there, working on the public space in front of it, and trying to mix these people with incomes that are coming from a different part of the society. But not often is feasible. Sometimes is absolutely impossible, as for in the case of sub-Saharan Africa. I would say we have a lot of work to do in order to convince people regarding that. Of course, when you succeed, then we have another problem that is related to gentrification. How to keep people staying together with different incomes. The solution is impossible, but I don't want to spend all time on that. But of course, is a very important question. What we are doing also is we are trying to recognize the land use. We are, let's say, advocating, my colleagues that are most working with land titles are trying to work with the concept of recognizing also informality as land tenure. So a way of giving tenure to people that never had let's say, formal title. I think this is working very well in some cases, in others it's more difficult. For the multiscalar approach, bottom-up, top-down, really, I think is the interesting thing is that you have to, at least this is how we work, we are trying to, let's say, fly between scales at the same time. Sometimes we understand things at the regional level, going on the ground and looking at what is happening in different neighborhoods. Sometimes we are understanding what is happening in different neighborhoods with things that are happening far from the area. For example, in Conakry, we understood that there is a problem of waste we are doing also some detailed plans in part of the city, one detailed plans in the city center, and we have a problem of waste in this place. And then with the regional analysis, we discovered that the problem is that we don't have, I mean, this place don't have a waste management system, and the actual let's say, infrastructure for waste management is absolutely overwhelmed and not capable to solve the needs of the new population of the city. So regional issue that explain local problems. Implementation is difficult. And it's difficult because when you are talking about urbanization, you are talking about money, you are talking about power, you are really putting the finger in the business, in a business that is quite important. In developed countries, we have something that is called universities that are forming our students and forming our people. We have let's say the majority, almost the majority of people are well informed, or at least receive the minimum information in order to understand if a political is doing the right thing or not. In developing countries, this is not happening. So really implementation of a plan is touching the rights of everyone, and usually is not really well accepted. Plans are approved, is a facade. People are saying, politicians are saying, now we have the new plan, I like it very much, and we will take it I will put on a shelf, and I will try to forget it as much as possible. This is happening at the moment I'm speaking in one city, for example, in Kenya. We have a plan that is still to be approved because there is someone that wants to do something else before the plan is approved. And something that is not, and the population doesn't know that there is no media coverage regarding this issue. And of course, UN, given that this is a sort of, let's say, is a partner in other business that we need these partners to work with us in the future, for the future of this city. We also have a difficult position in terms of, let's say, attacking directly. So very difficult implementation is really related to money and power. But I think the idea I want to give is that if you want to implement a plan, you need a good plan. I mean, the good basis, the idea, the vision, the document. But then you need a legal framework and a governance framework to deal with the plan. So the people that will have to make this implementation possible, the rules that everyone knows and are common to everyone and well known to everyone in order to implement the specific plan. And then the rules and the plan have to play together in order to generate money. Generate money not only for one, as in the case of the diagram I was explaining, but for the community. Easy to say, most difficult to do in some countries in which land is controlled by one family, as for example Saudi Arabia, which is the king. New urban agenda. I think there is a potential in the new urban agenda related to this implementation issue of the three prongs I was mentioning before: legislation, the understanding finally that the problem is between legislation, design, and finance. If one of these legs is lacking, you won't implement anything. If you don't have money, you can have good legislation and a good plan. You won't implement. So I think the new urban agenda is putting highlighting the correct spot. So I'm really not because we worked on it and we are fully involved on it, but I think it's really also with the post New Urban Agenda approval, I have the impression that is really right. I mean, my experience on the field is demonstrating me every day that if one of these three legs is lacking, nothing can be implemented. And there was a sort of in the past sort of movement that was saying no, it's because of the participation. Participation will solve all the problems of implementation we have. Participative process is very, very important, of course, as I mentioned before, but it's not the key. The key is, I think, for the implementation is related to these three components.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thanks.
I also would like to ask a very short question about the new urban agenda. It was quite evident that the question of density, it is a quantitative question, but also in a way a qualitative question. So my question is, once you work in the different fields, the settlement models you work about are something that you elaborate related to the sites, or it's something that belongs to a kind of toolbox that you bring once you start to work about a project?
The density is, of course, the density is important. Is something that we are adapting to the context. I mean, not every context can afford the same density. China, I mean, China low density is 20 times the density of Saudi Arabia, and this is correct. I mean, it's correct like that. I think our different culture, different problems, different cities, and need also different approach to the problem of land and density. Let's say, we have some principles that are trying to state a sort of minimal density, but I really don't believe in a number for that. I really believe that as in the specific, you have to understand the place, and you have to, as an expert in planning, you have to calculate which is the density that you can apply there. This is my personal opinion. We have there are some studies that are demonstrating that less than 100 people per hectare, the public transport system is not efficient. I mean, it's not sustainable financially. Yeah, possibly this can be a number that we can have in mind, but I really think that we have to look case by case.
Thank you.
There's a question in the chat that is exactly what I would like to ask you. So
I cannot see the chat.
Omar, Hamed, Shazli, Madi. Can you open your screen? Omar, please.
Okay, I have a problem with the camera now, so I can't say my question. What would be our roles as young architects and urban planners to deal and solve these problems, and how we can prepare ourselves for it?
Yeah. Nice. I think I was mentioning New Urban Agenda and SDGs. I mean, the SDGs, of course, are well known, but really keeping an eye on the reports, yearly reports of the SDGs made by the UN, I think is relevant to understand which is the trend. Also, I recommend you guys to read our State of Cities report, our national but also for the world, the global reports for cities, full of data, but also are defining which are the challenges that you will find in your day by day job, future work as planner and architects and designers. So I recommend those. And then still, New Urban Agenda, we have decided that, I mean, in an effort that putting together Cuba with Saudi Arabia and China with the US, that this is the framework we have to use in order to fix the problems in our cities. It is not a perfect document, but I really recommend you to familiarize with the principles. Of course, also the practice in developing countries. If you go back to your country, you will know, probably you will better know the challenges that your country has in the specific. For me, in my personal experience, I was coming from Europe and well-educated Europe, working in one of the best planned city in the world, like Barcelona, and then I was dropped magically in Nairobi. And I discovered, for example, that all the tools that I had were absolutely insignificant in order to fix the problem of African cities. And just the experience of working and failing daily by day, day after day in implementing things, in proposing and understanding the complexity of working in developing countries helped me to better understand and to be a little bit more prepared. Yeah, experience and some lecture. I think there are also, I think it's also important to understand this duality between developed countries and developing countries. I think sometimes we are now in Piacenza, remotely or physically, but well-educated city, good university. We are forgetting that the biggest part of the humanity is not having this chance. So we have to deal with absolutely different kind of people that are living in conditions that we cannot imagine. And I think we have to start with, because the problems are coming from there, from this part of the globe, and we already discovered that we are on the same boat. And so if we don't start, let's say, fixing things also in that part of the world, we will have a serious problem also in our well-educated and already fixed part of the world, and as COVID is, by the way, demonstrating. I hope I answered the question in a way.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello.
Juan Carlos Rojas, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Salvatore, for your presentation. My question is, you're talking about the importance of the participation of women in the process in Saudi Arabia. What is your opinion about the role of women in the future of the urban planning, not only in the South countries?
This is a very nice question. Thanks for that. I'm a personal experience is that, and if you look at my team, I have to say there is a sort of quite clear imbalance toward women that I consider more serious sometimes that and really quite smarter than us. If I have to tell you, I need to be gender balanced by default because of the UN, but I have to say that in my experience I have that. But this is more or less a joke. In Saudi, for example, what we are having, and this is interesting, a current project I haven't mentioned with a different ministry, the Ministry of Housing, regarding social housing. We are doing this project right now while we are speaking, and we will do in October a workshop in Riyadh. And I decided, also building on the experience of the past program in Saudi, that we have to address the topic is, let's say, social housing, and how we can, let's say, introduce new typologies in Saudi Arabia that are really breaking a little bit and densifying a little bit the cities in Saudi Arabia. So the project that I showed in Buraida with this analysis of is the second part of the same story. So I decided that I wanted women experts, architects, women architects to tell me how to innovate in Saudi City. So we are organizing a design studio in Riyadh with 2 female universities in Riyadh in order to find out how we can innovate in the way of living in housing typologies in Saudi Arabia, respecting the cultural, let's say, the cultural rules, but also I want to listen from women how we can innovate in order to give mass opportunity, give more opportunities to them in a new more sustainable neighborhood and city. So I don't know. This is something I really believe. I really believe that the inputs that will come from women in Saudi Arabia this next October will be important, and the students will work for 2 months on these new typologies. So they will present us after Christmas the result of a research on innovation in housing typology for Saudi Arabia. This is also coming from my experience in this 30 workshop that we did in Saudi Arabia. Probably the best comments I've received were usually always from the small 7-10 women component of the audience that were there in the workshop.
Thank you. If I had a lot of questions, but since the Juan Carlos question, I was quite I was interested in one of your slides, the one with the diagram that demonstrate which projects are feasible. And you spoke about different indicators, the impact, the feasibility, or bankability, etc. And I do think that if we really would like to change this city, probably we have to change the way in which we produce everything in our city, the way in which we produce our goods and the way in which we produce the city has one of the goods of the market. And that I think could be the women role. So the possibility and our capability to introduce also inside the indicator to choose the project, the disruption of the symbolical part of the intangible value of our city, of our public space that probably are not so able to engage people because we don't have any more symbols and signs that allow us to engage our life into this context. I mean, sometimes not sometimes, often when you spoke about the project, you say we need money. Is it true that we need money or we need also the awareness of the need of this project for the community, the need of sustainability? Because otherwise, I don't think that there is an exit strategy. If our economical mainstream approach doesn't change, that is the city. That is the city of the market. And the role of women probably is like in a puzzle, change the point of view.
Yeah, very nice point. I think I agree with you. I just don't want to say, want to clarify, while talking about money, I'm not saying that cities are urbanization is to make money. But it's absolutely obvious that you need banks now today in the system we have in order to produce the city. Unfortunately, not all the city, but part of the city is done with money. Yes, actually, what we are trying to do, this is some normative work. We are also working in the lab at the moment. We want to, as you know, there is a methodology that is the capital investment plan system, so the CIP. Usually you analyze all the projects you have to do in one region or one city, and you look at what the municipality budget is and the capacity for the municipality budget is, and then you prioritize. And so prioritize is the word. How to prioritize? Usually we prioritize in order to make more money, and forgetting that there are some intangibles like, for example, quality of life. I think more and more we are discovering that quality of life is a sort of precious element that is more valuable than money. So in the lab, we are trying to prepare something that I'm not working on it. My colleagues are working on it, but I hear from the corridor, let's say, we are trying to adapt the capital investment planning to more social aspects that are not related to finance, to money. So how to decide, how to prioritize in terms of social benefit, in terms of gender balance, in terms of integration of people together. I don't know which will be the result of this experience, but I think it's worth trying to have something. I don't know if it's more or less. I think is what you were. I don't know if it was a question or more a reflection, but I think we are on the same page on that.
Thank you. I'm thinking that probably we need to shape a sort of anthropology to inhabit this kind of new city. And also another question was about how is it possible to manage a participatory plan if we have to deal, and that is one of the questions that we have to face in Piacenza, when we deal with so different citizenships. We have migrant, we have local inhabitant, very conservative, and to put together the point of view, the perspective, also the idea of the future of different population that represent the city, the inhabitant, and I mean also the citizen of our territory is not so easy. You know, the stakeholder map, it's something that probably is the challenge for this participatory approach.
Yes, it's so a challenge that most, I mean, 99% of the participatory process, that is so-called participatory process in developing country, usually is a fake participatory process in which the usual people is invited, and actually you have no chance to meet the people, the citizens that are not invited to the gathering. This is very frequent. Actually, I have to, let's say, to say that, for example, in Saudi Arabia, we are not able to reach the people directly. I mean, there is an interface between us and the people when we are, so the workshop and the stakeholders, I mean, is participatory, but really, I possibly never spoke regarding the city of one city in Saudi Arabia with a citizen, a common citizens. I always been directed to through a filter. This is the case of many countries, and for the same problem I was mentioning, in some countries there is one family that is owning 40% of the land. There is no interest of this family that is usually ruling the same countries to make the people know that they are actually owning their future. So complicated is related to democracy, to also education. In Piacenza, things are difficult, but I'm pretty sure are easier than in Nairobi and Riyadh. Education, democracy.
Very much. I don't know if there are other questions, Michele.
No questions on the chat.
Now, Omar has already spoken. Okay, we can ask students if you have any other question or comments for Salvatore. I guess also, Antonella, as we have done with Rafa Forero lecture on Tuesday, maybe if students have some question to give or some comment to give to Salvatore, maybe they can also write him, or we can interact also in the next days and weeks, also in order to improve this interaction between Polyme and UNHABITAT. I guess it can be fantastic. And I was very interested to know, yeah, Salvatore has already talked about this, the question of participation. He was very interested in this question. There was maybe, and if I have 1 minute to give the last question to Salvatore, a point that he touched, but maybe we haven't focused it deeply. And is it the question of identity of the site? I mean, UNHABITAT, okay, it's a global institution working in different countries, different situations. I guess trying to get in every situation the local identity, try to understand what is the local. I think it's also difficult for you. My feeling is, I'm asking you because I guess your team is an international team made by person by different countries, different environment, different backgrounds. And so how can you get exactly in the feeling of, well, of people or the site that is something in our school, in our workshop, we face with, okay, we need to understand what the site is asking us, the genius logic and whatever we know very, very good as architects.
Thanks. No, it's just to clarify, also a little bit the structure of the UN agency. We have headquarters and this pool of international experts are in headquarters, but in all our projects, we are at least backed up by our regional office. So we have 4 regional offices for different areas in the globe, and then we have country offices. And usually we have at least one person that can, let's say, guide us in the problem of understanding, at least at the broader level, the city before going there. Then another thing that we are, if possible, in terms of financial capability and also COVID right now, COVID possibilities, is to have always a team in Nairobi, but also a team on the ground. So, and this is quite important. I mean, for example, in the Conakry situation, we are trying with all our efforts, and we're doing all our efforts in order to keep in Conakry at least one person full time every day, in order to keep, I mean, absolutely necessary in order to keep maintaining relation with the ministries, keeping doing the workshops, gathering data from the streets. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that we are. These are the 2 things that we have. We have a sort of structure that as a governance structure that allow us have received some inputs from people that know well places before we enter in action. And then as lab, we are also using the localizing the lab in the city. This is also very, very important in order to achieve and understand really the city. I'm really not sure we can plan only through Google Earth and Google Maps, and think that sometimes you really actually to go there and smell the place.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, for your lecture. I hope that our students and our colleagues enjoy. I'm really happy to introduce the thought of UNHABITAT, but in particular the thought of the people that work for UNHABITAT. You know that sometimes the multilateral seems big brother. Instead are full of people that in a very generous and professional and passionate way work on the ground. So I'm really happy, and thank you very much, because I really would like to share with my colleagues and with our students the pleasure to work with you and your organization. So thank you very much. I read some information for the student for tomorrow, and I leave the floor to Sarah.
No, just to remember, students are aware of this. Tomorrow we have the midterm discussion. So the meeting is here in this class at 11:30 with atelier number 1, atelier number 2, and atelier number 3. But for all the ateliers, appointment is at 11:30. So to have a common discussion of this first 3 days of jobs on the ground. Okay, remotely for most of us, but on the ground, trying to smell the Piacenza condition.
Bellini.
Thank you. Thank you.
Grazie mille.
Grazie mille.
Salvatore,
Ciao a tutti.
Grazie mille.
Bye bye.
Ciao Juan.
Ciao a tutti.